My name is Camille Hartman, and at 33, I've spent more than a decade building my career as a project director at Harrison and Cole Consulting in Chicago. On paper, my life looks neat, structured, stable, full of accomplishments. My colleagues see me as the woman with the corner office and a panoramic view of the skyline. My neighbors know me as the one who leaves before sunrise in a tailored coat, coffee in one hand, laptop bag in the other. But if you've ever wondered what it's like to be the responsible one in a family, the person everyone calls when something needs to be fixed, covered, or rescued, this story is for you. If you enjoy true-to-life family stories about boundaries, self-respect, and the fine line between loyalty and being used, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share it with someone who might see themselves in my shoes. It's how these stories keep coming, and it means more than you know. From the outside, my life might seem enviable. My younger sisters, Chloe and Megan, chose a different path. At 27, Chloe is the bubbly one, living in Denver with her husband and their 1-year-old son. Megan, 29, lives in Austin with her husband and 2 kids, always juggling school pickups and soccer practice. Meanwhile, I've been the one staying late at the office, navigating million-dollar contracts, and making sure deadlines don't crumble under pressure. I don't regret my choices, but there are moments, quiet ones, like when I walk into my apartment late at night, and the only sound is the hum of the fridge, when I wonder if I've traded something irreplaceable for this version of success. It was a Tuesday morning in late February, the kind where the city feels half asleep under a pale layer of snow. My office smelled faintly of fresh coffee and printer ink. I had a stack of quarterly reports spread across my desk, and my mind was deep in numbers when my phone lit up with Chloe's name. I answered on the second ring. "Hey, Cam!" Chloe's voice was a burst of sunshine, even through the tinny speaker. "Got a minute?" "Sure," I said, sliding the reports aside, though part of my mind was still on a budget discrepancy I needed to resolve. "What's going on?" "You know Mom's turning 62 in a couple of months, right?" she asked, her tone dipping into something conspiratorial. "Of course. Hard to forget the woman who calls me every Sunday morning to remind me to get more sleep," I said with a smile. Chloe laughed, then continued, "Well, Megan and I have been talking. We're planning something big for her birthday. Like, really big, but we'll need everyone to chip in." I leaned back in my chair. "Okay, how much are we talking?" When she told me the amount, I nearly inhaled my coffee the wrong way. It was more than I'd spent on my last vacation, which, if I'm being honest, had been 3 years ago, and mostly involved answering work emails from a hotel balcony. "That's a lot," I managed. I know," Chloe rushed to say, "but it's going to be worth it. Trust me." And because trust me has always been my family's way of saying, say yes without asking too many questions, I pulled up my banking app. "All right, I'll transfer it now." "You're the best," Chloe chirped. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "Oh, and make sure you block off the whole week for the celebration. Don't plan anything else, okay?" Something in her voice made me pause, but before I could ask, she'd already launched into a story about her toddler learning to say banana, and then hung up to get back to her morning. I stared at my phone for a moment, a faint unease curling in my stomach. I told myself it was just the size of the expense, or maybe the way Chloe had been vague about the actual plan. But I had a client call in 5 minutes, and like always, work took priority. That's the thing about being the reliable one. You get so used to pushing your own curiosity, your own discomfort, to the back of the line. You tell yourself there will be time to ask later, time to figure it out. I didn't know it yet, but this single phone call was the first domino in a chain I'd been unconsciously setting up my whole life. And in just a few weeks, every carefully balanced piece, my role in the family, my patience, even the way I saw myself, was about to tip over. The following Friday was one of those days that felt like the whole city was moving in slow motion. A thin drizzle coated the windows of my office, turning the Chicago skyline into a watercolor blur. I'd just wrapped up a tense budget review with my team and was half hoping the rest of the afternoon would be quiet. It wasn't. My phone lit up with Chloe's name, the contact photo of her and her son grinning in matching Denver Broncos beanies. I hadn't seen her in person for almost a year. Our visits were always derailed by her family obligations or my work deadlines, but she called often enough to keep the illusion of closeness alive. I hesitated for half a second, my mind still tangled in spreadsheets, then answered. "Hey, Chloe, how's my favorite nephew?" "He just learned how to say pasta, and he refuses to eat anything else," she laughed. The sound was warm and familiar, the kind that used to make me drop whatever I was doing to help. "That sounds like a phase," I said, smiling despite myself. "So, what's up?" Her tone shifted, softening into something more deliberate. "You remember Mom's birthday is coming up in April, right?" "Of course." 62, I replied. Hard to believe. She still runs circles around me in the kitchen. Chloe chuckled, then drew in a breath. "Well, Megan and I have been working on a surprise for her. Something big. We're talking once-in-a-lifetime kind of big." I leaned back in my chair, curiosity stirring. "Big as in?" "As in a full week at Aspen Mountain Resort. Skiing, spa days, the whole deal." Her voice quickened with excitement. "We've already locked down the dates and started booking accommodations." "That's ambitious," I said slowly. "Sounds expensive." There was a pause, long enough for me to hear the faint echo of cartoons in the background at her place. Then, casually, "We're asking everyone to chip in. I'll text you the breakdown." The text came through before she even finished the sentence. When I opened it, my eyebrows shot up. It was more than I'd spent on my last proper vacation. The number sat on my screen like a dare. "Chloe, this is..." I trailed off, searching for a word that wasn't just a lot. "I know," she said quickly, "but we want this to be perfect. It's Mom's big birthday. We'll all remember it forever." I glanced at the report spread across my desk. My budget for the quarter suddenly felt like a safer conversation, but I also knew my sisters. Once they had a plan in motion, it was easier to agree than to fight the current. "All right," I said finally. "I'll transfer it tonight." "You're the best." Relief and triumph laced her words. Then, almost too casually, she added, "Oh, and make sure you take that week off from work. Don't plan anything else." Her phrasing made me pause. "Wait. Why would I need the whole week off if it's in Aspen? I mean, sure, travel days, but..." "You'll see," she cut in quickly, her voice bright again. "It's going to be great. Trust me." I opened my mouth to press further, but she launched into a story about her son's latest daycare mishap, and before I could circle back, she was signing off with a cheerful, "Love you, Cam. Talk soon." When the call ended, I stared at my phone for a moment, the unanswered questions pressing against the back of my mind. Something about her quick shift away from the topic didn't sit right. Still, my inbox was already pinging with new requests, and habit won over suspicion. I slipped my phone face down on the desk and returned to the neat comfort of numbers and project deadlines. But as the day wore on, that conversation replayed in my mind in fragments. The casual tone, the steep amount, the oddly specific request to keep the week clear. It was like a puzzle I wasn't being shown all the pieces to. If I'd known then what that missing piece was, I might have pushed harder. I might have said no before the trap was set. Instead, I convinced myself there would be time to figure it out later. I didn't realize that later, for me, would come in the most unexpected and humiliating way possible. 2 Saturdays later, Portland felt like it was holding its breath. A mist hung over my parents' street, softening the edges of cedar fences and parked cars. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary chicken and warm dinner rolls, a scent that hadn't changed since I was 10. Mom, Linda, moved with practiced choreography between oven and stovetop. Dad, David, decanted a modest Pinot and tried to keep pace with the noise rising from the living room. By the time I arrived, coats already crowded the entry tree and a small mountain of shoes lined the baseboard. I added my heels to the mess and took in the familiar scene. Megan in the dining room folding napkins into triangles because it looks nicer. Chloe crouched by the coffee table showing a video to one of the twins, Josh or Emily Carter, I couldn't tell which from the crown of curly hair, while someone's toddler squealed at a fistful of blueberries. "Camille!" Mom beamed, as if I'd flown in from a war zone instead of Chicago. She pressed a kiss to my cheek, her hands flour-dusted and warm. "You're thin. Are you eating? Sit, sit." "I eat," I said, laughing, letting her usher me in. Dad enveloped me in a hug that smelled like aftershave and oak. For a second, I felt the old safety of coming home. We flowed toward the table in that chaotic way families do, pausing to wipe a spill, rescue a fork from under the sideboard, answer a child calling Aunt Camille. The Carter's twins darted past me with superhero capes. Henry Davis, 5, solemn as a judge, marched after them holding a plastic ambulance. Ella, 3, and Mason Parker, 1, giggled in their high chairs as Chloe strapped them in. A quick flicker of awareness cut through me. So Chloe did bring both of Rachel's kids. Wait, no, I corrected myself. The Parkers, Rachel's family, were here. Chloe had borrowed Ella for a cuddle, and Rachel was right behind her with Mason's diaper bag. For the record, and to keep the ledger straight, Megan's younger one stayed with her in-laws this week, and Chloe's toddler wasn't making this Aspen trip. Altitude and ear pressure, the pediatrician said. The 5 children actually going, Josh, Emily, Henry, Ella, and Mason, were very much present, rosy-cheeked and sugar-charged. Dad raised his glass once everyone found a seat. "To your mother," he said, eyes softening. 62 soon, but still out hiking me by mile 2. Mom swatted his shoulder, but the compliment landed. Her face glowed the way it does when she's trying not to smile too widely. The first plates went around: rosemary chicken, glazed carrots, a bowl of green beans slick with butter. Forks chimed against ceramic. A hum gathered over the table, that layered music of crosstalk and inside jokes. For a few minutes, I let myself drift on it. I asked Megan about Austin traffic and got the expected eye roll. Chloe told me a daycare story that ended with pasta on the cat, and I laughed as if I'd been there. Then Chloe cleared her throat. It was a dainty little sound, but somehow it snipped the conversation threads. The twins quieted. Even Henry looked up from his ambulance. "So," Chloe said, pushing a single pea back and forth with her fork as if it were a chess piece, "we can finally share the big news." Dad grinned. "Aspen," he announced prematurely, incapable of suspense. "Mountain air. Powder." He looked at me. "Cam, if your boots are like mine, they're older than marriage." I smiled back. I actually don't have ski boots. Or a suit. "That's okay," Chloe said quickly. "We've got it all arranged." Megan sat up straighter, excitement sharpening her features. "The dates are set, the rooms are booked, spa appointments on day 2, sleigh ride night 3. Mom's going to love it." It should have felt good. This careful orchestration, this sense of lavish celebration. Instead, a thin wire of unease tightened in my chest. I waited for someone to loop me into the part I'd missed. "What's my room? What's the plan?" I opened my mouth to ask. Mom beat me there. She laid her fork down with a decisive click. The room seemed to tilt toward her, an audience awaiting the punchline. "Actually, honey," she said, and there it was, the careful, gentle tone she used when suggesting I might enjoy peeling potatoes for 3 hours. "We were hoping you could do us a huge favor while we're there." A breathless half-second. The twins' capes rustled. A pot simmered somewhere, soft and insistent. "A favor?" I said, keeping my voice neutral. "What kind of favor?" Chloe and Megan looked at each other the way sisters do when they've practiced a line. Megan nudged the bowl of green beans toward me, as if butter and salt would smooth what came next. "To watch the kids," Chloe said brightly. "Just during the days. Well, most of the days." "All 5, Megan added with an apologetic wince that never reached her eyes. "The Carter's twins, Henry, Ella, and little Mason." The words slipped into place with a tidy, terrible logic, the size of the contribution. The insistence I block off an entire week. The sudden, heavy silence falling around the table, as if everyone had agreed in advance to hold their breath until I said yes. I looked from face to face. Dad's smile faltered at the edges. Megan tilted her head, sweetening her expression. Chloe toyed with her napkin. Mom, steady, met my eyes. There are moments when your body knows before your brain does. My shoulders went still. The muscles along my jaw tightened. I heard myself say, very softly, "You want me to watch the kids, while you all go ski." "It's not like you'd be alone," Megan said quickly. "We'll pop back for lunch between runs, and nights are family time, all together. The resort has great childcare activities too, crafts, movies." "But not for Mason's age," Chloe added, almost triumphant at the detail. "Which is why this works so perfectly." "Perfectly," I repeated, tasting the word like a lemon seed. Mom reached across the table, her hand hovering above mine. "Camille, you're so good with them. They adore you. And you prefer quieter things anyway. The slopes can be chaotic." She smiled, soft and maternal. "This way, everyone gets what they need." Everyone. I glanced at the 5 small reasons for this perfect plan. Josh and Emily were whispering, their capes pooled at their backs. Henry had lined the peas into neat rows. Ella's lashes were pearled with tears because her roll had split wrong. Mason banged his spoon and beamed at the noise. They were beautiful, chaotic, alive. None of this was their fault. I set my fork down, aligning it with the knife because order helps when your chest goes bright and hot. "I don't even have a ski suit," I said, not because it mattered, but because it was a fact I could hold without dropping. "We can order you one, but you won't really need it," Chloe said, already solving problems I hadn't presented. "Maybe a warm parka for sleigh night." "What about my plans?" I asked. It came out quieter than I meant. "I thought I was part of the celebration." "You are," Mom said with cheerful finality. "You're making it possible." A soft clink as Dad set his glass down. He looked at me, then at Mom, something uncertain flickering across his face. It passed quickly, smoothed over by habit. "You'll be bored out there anyway," Megan said with a light laugh that, if you weren't listening, could pass for kindness. "It's noisy, cold, crowded. Your nightmare." "How would you know what my nightmare is?" I asked before I could stop myself. My voice wasn't loud, but it sharpened, a thin edge slipping free. The table's energy changed. Subtle, but decisive. A current I had always swum with now pressed against me. Chloe's smile thinned. "We just mean you don't have kids or a husband to take a break from. This trip is for Mom, and honestly for those of us who haven't had a full night of sleep in years." "And what?" I asked. "Don't need a break?" No one answered. Plates were suddenly very interesting. Somewhere in the house, a timer went off, shrill and insistent. Mom stood to fetch the rolls, relief in the motion. While she was up, Dad tried to buoy the room. "We'll make it fun," he said. "Hot chocolate, snowmen with the little ones. We'll take turns." Megan and Chloe didn't disagree out loud, but the plan on their faces was clear. My turns would be the turns that mattered. Mom returned with a basket of rolls, steam coiling upward. She set it down carefully, then met my eyes once more. "Camille," she said, using my full name like a peace offering. "This is our gift to the family. Yours included?" I held her gaze and saw a logic that had shaped every version of me I had ever been in this house. The helper, the fixer, the girl who stayed behind to clean up because she did it well. Maybe they weren't trying to be cruel. Maybe they were simply following a map we'd drawn together, one yes at a time. I swallowed. The roll basket smelled like butter and heat, and 100 other dinners where I'd agreed silently. "Okay," I said, but not the way they expected. Not a yes. A placeholder. A syllable to buy breath. "I hear you." The timer in my chest, the one that had started when Chloe said trust me on the phone, ticked louder. I let my eyes travel the table, Mom's flushed cheeks, Dad's hopeful look, Megan's tidy napkin folds, Chloe's restless fingers, 5 small faces beaming or pouting or plotting for more butter. I felt something steadying inside me, not anger exactly, clarity. I reached for my water, took a slow sip, and set the glass back down squarely. "So," I said, keeping my voice even, Just so I'm clear, the plan is Aspen for a week. You'll ski, spa, slay. I'll watch the Carter's twins, Henry, Ella, and Mason during the days. Evenings together. And breakfasts, Chloe added, brightening as if we'd closed a deal. We can all do breakfast. Breakfast, I repeated. Right? The room exhaled in unison. Relief softened spines. Conversation tiptoed back in. For a few beats, it almost sounded like celebration again. I smiled, a small, polite curve of the mouth, and passed the basket of rolls to Henry, who thanked me with grave sincerity. The pea rows went crooked as he reached. He frowned, then started arranging them again. I watched him choose order and felt the strangest calm. I didn't argue. Not yet. Scene 4 would begin, I realized, the moment this table broke and the house fell back into coats and car seats and goodbye hugs. For now, I would hold the silence and let it tell me what I needed to know. Who looked away? Who looked through me? Who looked at me and saw more than a solution? Save room for dessert, Mom called from the kitchen, cheered by the return of chatter. I made lemon bars. Your favorite, Dad said to me, pleased to have delivered a kindness. I nodded, the quiet steady as breath. I remember. And I did. Sweet, tart, bright enough to wake the tongue. Exactly the kind of thing that could make a person think they'd been fed, even if the plate in front of them had been empty all along. The dinner plates were still warm when the decision crystallized in my mind. It didn't come with a lightning bolt or a grand speech, just a steady, unmistakable pulse. I don't want this role anymore. I set my fork down and folded my napkin neatly on the table, giving myself the small structure of order before I spoke. I can't do that, I said, my voice even but carrying enough weight to still the low chatter around us. Megan's head snapped up from buttering a roll. Can't do what? Spend the week watching the kids while everyone else celebrates Mom's birthday, I replied, meeting each of their eyes in turn. I want to be part of the celebration too. For a beat, the only sound was Mason's spoon hitting his tray in a slow rhythm. Chloe blinked, as if I'd just confessed to something scandalous. Cam, you're overthinking it. It's not like you're missing out. We'll be in and out, and you'll still be with us at night. That's not the point, I said. This is Mom's milestone birthday. I don't want to still be with you at night. I want to be there, with all of you. For all of it. Mom's face softened in the way it does when she thinks she's talking me off a ledge. Honey, it's not about excluding you. It's about giving everyone what they need. The slopes aren't your thing, and the kids love you. It'll be easy. Easy? I felt the word catch like grit between my teeth. 5 kids under 7? That's not easy, Mom. And it's certainly not a vacation. Megan sighed, the sound heavy with older sister patience, even though she was younger than me. Camille, come on. You've never been into winter sports. You'd be bored. This way we can all relax knowing they're with someone we trust. How would you know what I'd be? I asked, my tone sharper than intended. You didn't ask me. You just assumed. Chloe shifted uncomfortably, but her voice stayed light. Because we know you, Cam. You're not the spa après-ski type. You've said it yourself. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. You know what I've said? I've said yes to a lot of things. Things I didn't want to do because it helped you. But this time, I'm saying no. The air thickened, the way it does right before a storm. Mom broke the silence, her voice a fraction tighter. Don't be like that. This is supposed to be a happy time. It is. For you, I said quietly. Not for me. Megan leaned forward, elbows on the table. So what, you're just going to ruin the whole plan after everything we've arranged? Arranged without me, I reminded her. That landed. Chloe's smile faltered, her eyes flicking to Megan as if searching for a lifeline. Mom picked up her glass, took a slow sip, and set it down with the finality of someone closing a file. Camille, she said. I think you need to take a breath. You're tired, maybe stressed from work. Once you've had time to think, you'll realize this is the best option. There it was, the blueprint we'd been using my whole life. I push back, they wait me out, I cave, Only this time I didn't feel tired or stressed. I felt clear. "I've thought about it," I said. "And my answer's the same. I'm not doing it." For a moment, no one moved. Even the kids seemed to pick up on the shift, their chatter dimming to a cautious hum. The lemon bars Mom had proudly announced sat untouched at the far end of the table, steam fading into the cool air. Finally, Chloe leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Fine, do what you want, but don't expect everyone to rearrange their lives because you suddenly want to change your role." "My role," I repeated. "You mean the one I never agreed to in the first place?" Megan exhaled sharply and reached for her phone, her fingers tapping in quick bursts. I didn't need to see the screen to know she was venting to someone, probably her husband in Austin. Mom's tone cooled, like the air when a front moves in. "You've always been reliable, Camille. That's something I've been proud of. But right now, I'm disappointed." I pushed back my chair. The legs scraped against the hardwood, and the sound felt louder than it was. I didn't slam anything, didn't raise my voice. I simply stood, took my coat from the rack, and slipped it on. "Camille," Mom started, but I shook my head. "I'm not doing this," I said, my voice steady. "And if that's a problem, I guess we'll have to figure it out." I walked to the door. No one followed. No one called after me. The only words that trailed me out came from Mom, half muttered but meant to be heard. "She'll come around. She always does." The door closed behind me with a soft click. Outside, the air smelled of damp cedar and cold earth. My breath came in visible clouds as I crossed the driveway, each step carrying me farther from the table, from the unspoken expectation that I would fall back into line. This time I wasn't going to. The damp air clung to me all the way back to my hotel room that night. I had chosen to stay there during this trip, instead of my parents' guest room, my first quiet rebellion in years. The moment I shut the door behind me, the muffled hum of the city gave way to silence. I slipped off my coat, poured myself a glass of water, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the condensation on the glass until the first memory surfaced. It wasn't even a dramatic one. Just me at 18, standing in our kitchen in Portland, peeling potatoes while my friends were already 3 hours into a road trip to California. I'd said no to them because Mom and Dad were taking Chloe to a weekend volleyball tournament, and Megan wasn't great with the younger cousins. I'd told myself it was fine. I'd have other chances to travel, but spring break came and went, and the next trip never happened. The memories started lining up after that, one feeding the next. I was 21, halfway through a brutal semester at the University of Oregon, working nights at a diner to keep my scholarship afloat. Megan had her junior prom coming up, and the dress she wanted was, well, more than she could pay for with her part-time job at the smoothie place. I remember counting tips on my bedspread under the dim light of my desk lamp, setting aside 50 here, 75 there until I had enough. When she twirled in that deep green satin, she beamed at me and said, "You saved me, Cam." And I believed that was supposed to be enough of a thank you. Then came the college years for Chloe. I had just started my first real job, entry-level, low pay, but full-time. She called me from Denver one night crying over the phone about how she couldn't afford her textbooks for the semester. I wired the money before I paid my own rent. My landlord didn't find it nearly as noble as I did. And it wasn't just money, it was time. There was the time Megan and her husband flew to Mexico for their anniversary, and I drove 2 hours each way, 3 days in a row, to watch her kids because her sitter bailed. There was Chloe's work conference in Seattle, where she asked if I could just stay the weekend with her son, promising she'd be back Sunday night, and then her flight got delayed until Monday afternoon. I remember sitting on her couch at 2 a.m., the baby finally asleep on my chest, wondering how I'd make it to my 9 a.m. meeting in Chicago. It wasn't just emergencies either. There were the holidays. Thanksgiving after Thanksgiving, where I was the one in the kitchen while Mom entertained guests in the living room, the clink of wine glasses and bursts of laughter just beyond the swinging door. Christmas mornings, where I handed out gifts, took pictures, cleaned wrapping paper off the floor, while everyone else sank into the couch to watch movies. The thing is, I never minded helping in the moment. I told myself this was what family did: pitch in, show up, keep the wheels turning. But sitting alone in that quiet hotel room, I realized something chilling. No one had ever asked me what I wanted in return. It wasn't an exchange, it was an expectation. I thought of a conversation from 3 years ago, after Dad had his knee surgery. We'd all gathered in Portland to help. I'd taken 2 weeks off work, unpaid because my company was in the middle of a contract freeze, to cook, drive him to physical therapy, handle the errands. On the last night before I flew back to Chicago, Megan had smiled and said, "You're a lifesaver, Cam. We don't know what we'd do without you." And then, without missing a beat, she added, "By the way, can you come back next month for Chloe's baby shower? I know you'll make it special." I'd said yes, like always. The more I replayed these moments, the heavier they felt, not because I'd given, but because my giving had become invisible. It was never, "Camille, this must be hard for you." It was always, "Camille, you can handle this." I stood and walked to the small desk in the corner of the room, flipping open my laptop. The blue light cast my reflection faintly in the dark window, a tired woman in a tailored coat, hair pulled back, jaw tight. I thought of the dinner table that night, of Mom's warm voice telling me everyone gets what they need, and realizing I'm not part of everyone. That was when another, more recent memory hit me. Just last year, when my team at work won a major client, I'd planned a weekend trip for myself. 3 days in Santa Fe, art galleries, quiet mornings, no one else's schedule. 2 days before I was set to leave, Chloe called. Her sitter had the flu. Could I just take her son for the weekend? I canceled my trip, didn't even ask for the flight credit. The next Monday, she'd thanked me in a quick text. "You're the best." That was it. I closed the laptop, my decision hardening. This wasn't about Aspen. It wasn't about skiing or babysitting. It was about the years of yes that had erased the possibility of no. And for the first time, I could see the line I needed to draw. By Sunday morning, the gray Portland sky had given way to a weak strip of sunlight. I sat cross-legged on my hotel bed, phone in hand, staring at Mom's contact photo, her laughing on Cannon Beach, wind in her hair. I wasn't ready to torch the bridge, not yet. The memories from the night before still pressed at me like weights in my chest, but they were balanced by another thought. Maybe there's a way to make this work without giving up the whole week. I scrolled through my notes app, where I'd already jotted ideas between sips of burnt lobby coffee, licensed childcare services in Aspen, hourly rates, even a boutique nanny agency that specialized in vacation coverage. My plan was simple. I'd cover the cost myself. Everyone could enjoy the trip, and I wouldn't spend 7 straight days juggling 5 kids. I waited until a reasonable hour, 9:15, just after I knew Mom would have finished her first cup of tea. I hit call. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" "Well enough," I said, keeping my tone steady. "Listen, I've been thinking about the Aspen trip. I have an idea that could work for all of us." I heard the faint sound of a cabinet closing on her end. "All right." "I'll pay for a professional babysitter to come along," I explained. "Someone with credentials, references, the whole deal. They can handle the daytime care, and I can still be with you in the evenings. That way, everyone gets to celebrate together." The silence that followed stretched a few beats too long. "That won't work, Camille," she said finally, her voice tightening just enough to register. "We can't trust a stranger with the children." "She wouldn't be a stranger, Mom. I'd vet them, speak to past clients." "You're not hearing me," she cut in. "We know you. We know you'll keep them safe, keep them happy. It's perfect the way we've planned it." I swallowed. "I want to be there for your birthday. Really be there, Mom. I don't want to miss the moments." A pause, and then, "You're not exactly a social butterfly. The noise, the crowds, it's not your style. The children will keep you busy, and you enjoy spending time with them. This is for the best." And just like that, the line went dead. No goodbye. Just a click, and the quiet hiss of disconnection. I stared at my phone, still pressed to my ear as if I'd misheard. It buzzed again almost immediately. Chloe. "How dare you!" she hissed before I could say hello. "What?" "Mom told me about your little babysitter idea. Are you trying to ruin everything?" I sat up straighter, the hostility in her voice catching me off guard. "Ruin? I'm trying to make sure we can all enjoy the trip. We already have a plan, Camille. Everything's booked. Activities, meals, the works. And now you want to throw a wrench in it because you can't just do this one thing for the family? One thing? My voice rose before I could stop it. Chloe, this isn't one thing. It's a week of me giving up my vacation. She steamrolled over me. If you ruin this trip, if you spoil Mom's birthday, don't bother talking to me again. I mean it. The line clicked. I sat there staring at the phone, pulse pounding in my ears. Within minutes, a stream of texts lit up my screen. From Megan, from Mom, even from Aunt Susan. Mom, family needs to stick together. We all help each other out. Mom, remember when I watered your plants last summer while you were at that conference? Mom, you're good with the kids. They love you. Why can't you just stop being resentful and think about what's best for everyone? I typed, my thumbs steady despite the heat rising in my face. A real family doesn't take advantage of each other. A real family respects each other's wishes and includes everyone in their plans. A real family doesn't guilt-trip you into giving up your time and money without asking first. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, nothing. I set the phone down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling. The pattern was too clear now to ignore. The vague request for money, the casual, "Don't plan anything else that week," the big reveal at dinner that had already been decided without me. This wasn't thoughtless. It was orchestrated. And now that I wasn't falling into place, they were deploying every tool they knew. Guilt, threats, even rewriting history to make me feel ungrateful. But something had shifted in me after last night's refusal. Seeing the pattern didn't make me feel weaker. It made me feel certain. If they wanted to keep playing the game, they'd have to do it without me. The hotel room was still dim when I woke on Monday, but my phone screen was already lit with notifications, texts, voicemails, even a few missed FaceTime calls. I didn't open them right away. Instead, I sat at the small desk by the window, wrapped my hands around the paper cup of coffee I'd brought up from the lobby, and let my eyes follow the lines of the city skyline. When I finally did scroll, it felt like reading a script, one I knew too well. Mom, Camille, think about how much we've all done for you over the years. Chloe, if you don't help, we'll have no choice but to cancel. Megan, this isn't the sister I thought I had. Aunt Susan, I can't believe you'd let 5 little ones down like this. The wording was different, but the shape of it was the same. Position me as the problem, make me the reason for the ruin, remind me how much I owed, even if the debt was invented. It was like standing far enough back from a painting to see the full image for the first time. I could trace it now, every piece of the plan. First, the vague phone call from Chloe weeks ago. Don't plan anything that week, no mention of the resort. Then, the steep contribution request, with no breakdown of what it was actually for. Then, the reveal at dinner, framed as a celebration but delivered with the casual confidence of people who knew I wouldn't fight them. It wasn't an accident. They had decided for me, arranged my role, and written the ending, without ever letting me pick up a pen. And now that I'd gone off script, they were improvising the only way they knew how. Guilt, threats, and the implication that my worth to this family was directly tied to my willingness to serve. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup until the cardboard buckled. It's a strange kind of freedom, seeing the whole thing for what it is. You stop second-guessing your memory. You stop explaining away the sharp edges. I didn't feel rage, not the kind that made me want to yell. What I felt was colder, steadier. Like finally realizing the bridge you've been standing on is rotting and stepping back before it collapses under you. I pulled my laptop toward me and opened a search tab. If they were going to Aspen without me, then I was going somewhere entirely different. Within minutes, I'd found it. A small beachfront hotel in Key West, Florida. The photos looked almost unreal. White sand, turquoise water, a balcony overlooking the ocean. The kind of place that promised warm mornings and no obligations. I clicked book now without hesitation. 7 nights, ocean view. I even upgraded to a first-class seat on the flight. The number on the payment screen didn't make me flinch. In fact, the price felt like the first thing I'd spent on myself in years that didn't require justification. As the confirmation email hit my inbox, a text from Chloe buzzed through. "Are you ready to tell Mom you'll do it, or should we all keep waiting?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat back and pictured it, the exact moment they'd realize I wasn't home, that the built-in childcare they'd counted on had packed a suitcase and left the state. Not to punish them, but to finally choose something different for myself. The thought didn't make me giddy. It made me calm. I closed my laptop, slid the curtains open, and let the pale light spill into the room. My coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway, savoring the bitterness. It felt honest. This wasn't about escaping Aspen. This was about stepping out of a role I'd never agreed to, one deliberate choice at a time. For the first time in a long while, the week ahead was mine. The morning of my flight, Chicago was still asleep. The streets were slick from overnight rain, and the air had that early spring bite that makes you pull your scarf a little tighter. I wheeled my suitcase to the curb, the zip of its rollers a quiet reminder that, for once, this trip was only mine. At the airport, I kept my phone on airplane mode long before boarding. The family group chat icon sat there on the screen like a red warning light, but I didn't tap it. I wasn't interested in last-minute guilt campaigns or, "Are you sure you don't want to reconsider?" Voice notes. Not today. When the plane lifted from the runway, I pressed my forehead to the window. Chicago's grid of lights faded beneath a blanket of clouds, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel tethered to anyone else's schedule. By the time we descended into Key West, the world had changed. The sunlight hit me like a soft embrace, warm enough to make me shed my jacket before I even reached the taxi stand. Palm trees leaned toward the road as if they were curious about newcomers. Somewhere nearby, the ocean was breathing, a sound you don't just hear, you feel in your chest. The hotel was even better than the photos. My room had a balcony that seemed to float above the beach, the horizon a straight line of blue meeting blue. I stepped out, letting the humid air wrap around me, and thought, this is what space feels like. The first afternoon, I walked the shoreline barefoot, letting the warm sand fill the spaces between my toes. A man with a weathered face and a straw hat sold coconuts from a cart, and I bought one just to watch him slice it open with a single, practiced stroke. Sitting on a low wall, I sipped the cold, sweet water and let the salt wind push all the static out of my head. I filled my days with things I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. Quiet breakfasts where no one needed me to pour their coffee, hours spent reading on a lounge chair without the buzz of a phone dragging me back, dinners where the only conversation I had to manage was with a waiter describing the catch of the day. On the second morning, while I lingered over an omelet in the open-air cafe downstairs, the couple at the next table struck up a conversation. They were retired teachers from Maine on their annual trip south to escape the snow. "You're here alone?" the woman asked, not with pity, but genuine curiosity. "Yes," I said, surprising myself with how easily the answer came. "And I think I might be making it an annual tradition." She grinned. "Smart girl." Each evening, I'd return to my balcony for the sunset. The sky would start bleeding pink and orange into the waves, and I'd sit there with a glass of wine, watching the horizon swallow the day. No interruptions, no one asking me to just do one more thing. It wasn't that I didn't think about them. Mom, Chloe, Megan. I did. But the thoughts came like faint radio static from another room. I wonder if they've left for Aspen yet. Did the twins lose their mittens again? How many texts are waiting for me right now? I didn't check. The silence was the point. On the fifth day, after swimming lazy laps in the pool, I wandered into a small art gallery just off Duval Street. The owner, a silver-haired man in a linen shirt, told me the paintings were all local work. I stopped in front of one, a vivid scene of two women sitting back-to-back on a dock, their fishing lines trailing into the water. They weren't looking at each other, but something about their posture felt unbreakable. I bought it without overthinking. When he wrapped it, I imagined it hanging in my apartment back in Chicago, a reminder of this week and the choice I'd made. The night before my flight home, I treated myself to a table at a quiet beachfront restaurant. The air smelled faintly of grilled snapper and lime. I ordered dessert without sharing it, took the long way back to my room, and stood for a moment at the edge of the surf, letting the waves pull at my ankles. The moon was high, the water dark and endless, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't feel like I was standing in the shadow of what someone else needed from me. I was just here, no agenda, no apologies. I knew that when I turned my phone back on the next day, the calm would be tested. I could already picture the unread messages, the missed calls, the accusations waiting like tripwires. But I also knew this. The person stepping off the plane in Chicago wouldn't be the same one who'd left. That version of me, the automatic yes, the reliable backup plan, had stayed behind somewhere between the palm trees and the tide, and she wasn't coming back. The plane touched down in Chicago just after noon. The temperature drop hit me the moment I stepped out of the terminal, Florida's salt-sweet breeze replaced by the sharp bite of Midwestern winter. My suitcase wheels rattled over the concrete, the sound oddly grounding after a week where nothing had demanded my attention. It wasn't until I was in the back of a rideshare, the skyline stretching ahead, that I slid my thumb over the black screen of my phone. The flood began instantly. The first vibrations came in quick bursts, texts, missed calls, voicemails stacking like dominoes. The icons blinked. Mom, Chloe, Megan, even numbers I didn't recognize but knew by heart belonged to extended family. My screen showed 87 unread messages. The number ticked upward before I could even open one. I took a deep breath and started at the top. Chloe, Camille, where are you? We're outside your place. Answer your phone. Megan, we're all waiting. The kids are restless. Mom, please tell me you're home. This isn't funny. A photo followed. 5 small faces peering up at my apartment building, bundled in winter coats, cheeks pink from the cold. The twins were holding signs that read, Aunt Camille, in crooked marker letters. I could almost hear the whine in Ella's voice, the thud of Mason's boots against the sidewalk. Josh, through Chloe's phone. We brought our sleds. Where are you? The timestamps told the story. First confusion, then urgency, then the slow burn of anger. Chloe, this is ridiculous. We have to leave for Aspen in an hour. Where are you? Megan, we can't take all 5 kids, you know that. Mom, I'm so disappointed in you. After everything we've done for you. The voicemails were worse. I put my earbuds in and pressed play. Chloe's voice came first, high and tight with panic. Camille, if you're getting these, you need to call me back now. We're freezing out here. Then Megan, lower but clipped. You can't just disappear like this. Do you know what you're doing to Mom? To all of us? Aunt Susan's message was a mix of disbelief and accusation. You ungrateful girl. These children were counting on you. How could you? By the time I reached Mom's latest voicemail, the panic had curdled into something colder. You've ruined my birthday. I hope you're happy with yourself. I paused the playback and stared out the window at the frozen river below. Chicago gleamed in the pale sunlight, the buildings sharp against the sky. Inside the car, the air was warm, but I felt something else, a steady, unexpected calm. This wasn't surprise. This was the script I'd been reciting with them for years, only now they were delivering their lines to a version of me who didn't feel the need to answer. Still, I scrolled further down. The group chat was a cacophony. Chloe and Megan firing messages back and forth, cousins chiming in with passive-aggressive comments. Even a neighbor I barely spoke to weighed in with, their family, Camille. Chloe, you've officially ruined Mom's birthday. Megan, do you know how embarrassing this is? Mom, I thought you were better than this. The words blurred together, not because I was overwhelmed, but because they'd all started to sound the same. I was the problem for not doing what they wanted. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Everything okay? I almost laughed. It's family. He nodded knowingly and didn't press. As my building came into view, I knew I wasn't going to carry this storm through my front door. They'd spent the week expecting me to be at their service. I'd spent the week reminding myself I didn't have to be. I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I watched the notifications stack and fade, like waves hitting a seawall. For the first time, I realized I wasn't standing in the tide anymore. By the time I unpacked my suitcase, the apartment was silent, except for the hum of the heating vents. The Florida sand was still clinging to the soles of my sandals, a small rebellion against the icy wind pressing against my windows. I had just zipped the suitcase closed and slid it into my closet when the pounding started. It wasn't a polite knock, it was a fist, urgent and unrelenting. My stomach dropped before I even reached the door. The pounding turned into the metallic scrape of a key in the lock. The emergency key, the one I'd given Mom years ago, just in case. The door swung open, and they came in like a front of bad weather. Mom in the lead, cheeks flushed, Chloe right behind her in a quilted parka, Megan dragging a tote bag that looked like it had been ripped from the back seat of a car. The air between them crackled with the cold from outside and something sharper. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Chloe's voice hit first, high, tight, already shaking with anger. I stayed where I was, hands still at my sides. "I'm guessing you're here to tell me." "You ruined everything." Megan's voice cracked in a way that was more accusation than grief. She dropped the tote onto my couch. The zipper burst halfway open, revealing a tangle of kids' scarves and mittens. Mom's birthday, the trip, all of it. "Ruined?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. "Because I chose not to spend my vacation babysitting?" "You abandoned us," Mom said, her voice low but cutting. "Do you understand? Your sisters had to take turns watching the children because Mike and John refused, and Chloe missed 2 whole days of skiing. We couldn't enjoy ourselves knowing how selfish you'd been." Chloe threw her hands up. "I stayed home, Camille. I didn't even go. Do you know how humiliating it was, explaining to everyone why?" I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw past the heat of her words to the deeper truth. They hadn't expected this, because I'd never forced them to. "You planned the whole thing without me," I said slowly. "Booked it, assigned me the role, took my money, my time, and never once asked if I wanted to be part of the actual celebration." "That's not fair," Megan snapped. "We assumed—" "Exactly," I cut in. "You assumed. You didn't give me a choice." Mom's expression hardened. "You've always helped before. You've never said no." "And that," I said, "is exactly the problem." The room went still. For a second, I thought maybe it had landed. Maybe they'd finally heard me. But then Chloe stepped forward, her arms crossed tight. "This isn't about choice, Camille. This is about family. We make sacrifices for each other." I met her gaze. "Sacrifice is voluntary. What you're talking about is obligation. There's a difference." Megan shook her head like she couldn't believe we were having this conversation. "You're twisting it. This was for Mom." "And I wanted to be with Mom," I said. "Not in some condo an hour away, juggling 5 kids while you went skiing." "You think you're better than us now, is that it?" Chloe's voice was sharp, almost brittle. "With your job and your trips and your whatever this is?" She gestured vaguely at the suitcase I'd just put away. "No," I said. "I just think I'm allowed to live my own life." Mom's voice rose then, brittle and final. "If that's how you feel, maybe I don't have a daughter named Camille anymore." The words hit harder than I wanted them to, but I'd prepared for this in some quiet corner of my mind. I stood a little straighter. "If that's what you need to believe, Mom, so be it." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Chloe made a frustrated sound and grabbed her tote off the couch, muttering under her breath. Megan avoided my eyes entirely, her jaw tight. They filed out without another word, the door clicking shut behind them. I stayed where I was, listening to the sound of their boots fading down the hallway. The apartment felt too quiet after they left, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Not the tense silence of waiting for the next demand, just space. I walked to the window, looking out at the gray Chicago sky. Somewhere far from here, the snow was falling in Aspen, the resort lights twinkling against the mountains. But none of that was mine, and for the first time, I was okay with that. 6 weeks can change more than I ever imagined. Chicago had begun to thaw, the first hints of spring sneaking into the wind, when I realized I hadn't thought about the Aspen trip in days. Not because I'd forgotten, but because it no longer sat heavy on my chest. The noise had faded, the guilt had loosened, and the space I'd made for myself, it was filling up with something better. In those weeks, the fallout came in waves. At first, there were texts from Chloe and Megan, sharp at the edges, dripping with disappointment, designed to pull me back into the role I'd abandoned. I responded only once. I'm not having this conversation again. After that, silence. Mom never called. Instead, her voice showed up in subtler ways, through family group messages I wasn't in anymore, mutual friends telling me, "Your mom's been talking." I let them talk. One Sunday morning, as I sipped coffee in my small kitchen, a neighbor I barely knew knocked on my door. "Saw your name tagged in a post," she said. "Sounds like your family's still sore." There was pity in her eyes, but I didn't need it. I smiled and said, "It's fine. They're entitled to their story, and I'm entitled to mine." That became my anchor. Work had been steady, almost joyful. I'd picked up extra projects, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My boss noticed. "You seem lighter," she said during a staff meeting, and I realized she was right. Without the constant undercurrent of resentment, my days felt mine. I filled weekends with things I hadn't done in years, meeting friends for brunch without checking my phone every 10 minutes, taking long walks by the lake, curling up with a book and actually finishing it. I even booked a solo trip for the summer, Portland, for the food trucks and bookstores. My first vacation with no strings, no obligations. The only direct contact I had with my family came 2 weeks ago. Chloe sent a photo of the kids with a short message, "They miss you." It made me pause. I replied, "I miss them too. You know where I am if you want to visit." She didn't answer. That silence hurt, but it didn't undo me. Because I finally understood, loving people doesn't mean letting them rewrite you. One evening, I found myself in the living room, candles lit, a gentle hum of rain outside. I picked up the journal I'd started after Aspen and reread the first entry. "I don't know who I am without them needing me." 6 weeks later, I wrote beneath it, "I'm someone worth needing, but only if I choose to give." I thought about that trip, about the confrontation in my apartment, about how much of my life I'd spent believing my worth came from being useful. And then I thought about the past 42 days, how they'd proven that my worth was never theirs to decide. If you've listened to my story this far, maybe you've felt some version of what I did. Maybe you've been the reliable one, the safe bet, the person everyone counts on without asking if you're okay with it. If so, here's what I learned the hard way. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel, it makes you honest, and the people who truly love you will find a way to meet you on that new ground. 6 weeks later, I'm not the same woman who stood in that apartment doorway while my family accused me of betrayal. I'm steadier, quieter in some ways, louder in others, and I've stopped apologizing for taking up space in my own life. So if you've been carrying the weight of other people's expectations, here's my advice. Put it down. See how it feels to stand without it. You might be surprised at how much stronger you are when you're not bending under someone else's load. Thanks for spending this time with me. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear yours. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need the reminder that their life is their own. And leave a comment. Tell me, when was the last time you chose you?